Morning, everybody. Welcome to Activate Her with me, Sally Goodwin. Welcome, welcome, welcome on this cold, wet and windy Cape Town morning, wherever you may be in the world. I'm not sure what the weather is like where you are. I know that I have friends in France who are experiencing a heat wave. But here in Cape Town, it is cold, wet, and windy. Winter has returned. I'm not sure who asked her to come back, but she has returned. Just when we thought that summer or spring at least had sprung, winter came back. She made a repeat experience. I do. I thought I was getting to pack it away, but it's too cold. Good morning, Reneel Way. Good morning, Tilly. Beautiful Milani, my wonderful friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome this morning. Oh, the light is shining in my eyes. Good morning, Berenice, my lovely friends. Welcome, everybody. Beautiful Bertha. Yes, it is a stormy morning. Good morning, Louise. It is a stormy, sorry, I have this light on here, but somehow or other it's shining right in my eyes this morning. Good morning, Simone, Arena, Joyful Jen, Karen, Bungie. Good morning, beautiful Bungie. Anthea, lovely Anthea. Oh, wonderful, Jen, you're going home with Caleb this morning. That's amazing. Awesome. Enjoy that. Good morning, Stu. So, ladies, can we all just say an enormous thank you to Stu, who has been working so hard on getting the recordings ready to be released on the social media platforms. So I released a whole lot of the photos yesterday. Good morning, Ethne. Oh, better weather in Joburg. Lucky for you, my friend. Good morning, Charlene. Good morning, Heather from the UK. Good morning, Elsaby. Gorgeous Elsaby. So I released a whole lot of the photos yesterday, not all of the photos. There's some other photos, just a few extra photos, because I couldn't release them all at the same time for some reason. Good morning, Charlene. So some of the photos I posted yesterday, I'll post the balance. Good morning, Conrad. Lovely to see you, my friend. I'll post the balance of the photos over the weekend sometime. They're like another 30 or so photos. If I double dip and post the same photo twice, please don't shoot me. There's so many now that I'm confused. But Stu has been working so hard on getting the recordings ready because the talking bit was so long that I can't post it as one recording because it's this enormous file. So he has had to edit it. Heroic Hilda, good morning, my friend. He has had to edit it and break it up into 3 separate parts so that I'm going to release or 2 separate parts, I forget now, 2 or 3 separate parts. So I'm going to release it as like part 1, part 2, part 3, or part 1 and part 2, whatever it is. But I also think that it's going to be like 2 or 3 half-an-hour sections. But I also think that's so much better because you ladies get to watch it as little as segments, and then you get to receive everything that the Lord released in those 2 or 3 segments and process it all separately. 3 parts. There we go. Thank you, Stu. I just would love you, ladies and gentlemen, to really just honor Stu and celebrate him because he is a professional. This is what he does. He's a professional. He worked for God TV. He's a professional cameraman, editor, like a super talented individual. And he did this. He sowed into my ministry by doing this. He didn't charge me. All it cost me was the price of a ticket. He gave up his whole entire Saturday. And this is not something, ladies and gentlemen, if you're like me and you have no understanding of how this sort of thing works, it requires enormously expensive equipment and enormous amounts of time. He doesn't just record it and slap it online. It requires editing. It requires, breaking it up in all the right spaces, it requires making me look good. The lighting in the place wasn't the best for recording. Like the sound has to be done right. It takes hours and hours and hours of time. So the event was on Saturday. It is now Friday, and it has taken Stuart almost a full week to actually get it to the point where he's ready to send it to me, where I can then actually release it. So just please, I would love you to be praying for Stuart. He's waiting for God to open doors for him in terms of employment and job opportunities and, all of that kind of thing. I would love for you to be praying for him. If you get a word for him, you can post it on here. Or reach out to him via Facebook Messenger or whatever. If you have a prophetic word from the Lord for him, he's waiting on God, but whilst he waits, he is actively waiting. He is doing what he can. He's sowing into the kingdom. He's bringing his peace. He's using his talents, and so please, I would love for you to just celebrate him, to honor him. He honestly is an incredible man of God, and he does what he can for the kingdom whilst he waits on the Lord for where he's supposed to go next. And he's an absolute legend. I agree with you, Charlene. And he's amazing, and he's super, super talented, super talented. And honestly, in as much as my husband Flynn is an absolute barak for me, and I've said this before in my teachings, Stuart has been a Mordecai. Stuart believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. When I was petrified to go in front of the camera in the very beginnings of Arise, when people started prophesying over me that I needed to record, it was Stuart who recorded my very first videos. It was Stuart who said to me, who prophesied over me right in the beginning, 3.5 years ago, that I would do an event, that I needed to do recordings, that I needed to do events, that I needed to do. He prophesied that I would. He prophesied these things 3.5 years ago, and it was him who made me comfortable in front of the camera. He has been a queen maker. He has been a queen maker. He has been my Mordecai. He has supported me and believed in me as much as my husband has supported and believed in me. He has dragged his camera equipment from pillar to post all around Cape Town to record me. He has opened doors for me everywhere that he possibly can. Honestly, the man deserves a medal, and he deserves for doors to be opened wide for him. So please, can we honor him? Can we celebrate him? And can we pray that God will open the doors that need to be opened for Stuart, because he has sown into the kingdom enormously, and those seeds, it's time that those seeds bear fruit and come into fruition. So yes. So absolutely, we need each other. We really do. And it is absolutely about women, being there for women. It is so about that. But it is about men supporting women. And Stuart is a man who supports women in ministry, who has always supported me particularly, but other women in ministry, other powerful women in ministry. Stuart has been there to support them, to lift them up, to speak into their lives, to record them, to do things like that. So really, he has played such an enormous role in more than one woman in ministry. And you will notice that he keeps putting in every comment, he calls me doctor, and he fully supports my studies, and that he has had a vision where he had a vision or a dream. I can't remember whether it was a vision or a dream now, but he had a vision or a dream where he saw me lecturing in some sort of university setting, or it looked like a university setting, and on the door he saw something like Dr. Professor Prophet Sally Goodwin, and so he keeps calling me doctor to remind me of how God sees me and where he feels I'm going. So yeah, so Stuart is amazing, and yeah, so that is just, so please let us bless and celebrate Stuart this morning. And any prophetic words for Stuart would be more than welcome. Okay, So, ladies and gentlemen, we just welcome the new people. A vision. There we go. He had a vision. Amazing. We welcome the new people. And we always, I can't always pay attention to all of the comments. So let us pray for the people who put their prayers up. You will have noticed from last week that there are some people that we're starting to attract in the comments that we don't necessarily want to attract. Please do not be distracted by those. And if they are, then please let us just let them pass by. If I notice comments that shouldn't be there, I will hide them. But I am possibly looking for somebody who is on the lives regularly and comes on at 8 o'clock with me and is on the lives on a regular basis on a Wednesday and a Friday, and someone who would be willing to volunteer to moderate. Because I think that is going to be where we're going, where I'm going to need someone who can go on the lives with me, because I can authorize someone to come on the lives with me, and who will be willing to moderate the comments for me. So just as people come on who shouldn't be on, where they can just hide the comments, or we can deal with the comments that come up that shouldn't be there. So I'm just going to put that out there. If there is anybody like that who comes on every Wednesday and Friday at 8 o'clock and would be willing to moderate the comments for me. So that I'm going to put out there, and we're going to leave that there. And then we're going to move on because we are excited, and we are going to be speaking about the remnant that has arisen around the earth and has been activated, because there was an enormous shift that took place on Saturday. And it is a shift that took place in God's sovereign timing. So it is a sovereign, we have been speaking over the last couple of years about convergence. We have been speaking about convergence, about God's kairos time converging with our chronos time, where God sovereignly moves on the earth because he has ordained certain things to happen within his kairos time. And we've been speaking about that converging with our chronos time, and we've been speaking about the significance of this particular decade, that there is a significance to this decade that God has ordained, that we don't know why he's ordained it, we don't understand it necessarily, we don't have to, because he is God and we are not, but that there is a significance to this decade where God is moving. And so there was a sovereign timing decreed and declared by God, and there was a shift that took place on Saturday, and it was a shift over each one of us as individuals, but more than that, it was a shift over our city, it was a shift over our nation, it was a shift over our continent, and it was a shift in the spiritual realm, and a shift that has been and will be felt globally. And there were people at that event that represented nations that I was not even aware that were there. People who, somebody mentioned that there was a lady there from the United Arab Emirates. I didn't even know that she was there. There was a friend of mine who happened to be there from Portugal that I didn't even know that she was there. And so, there were people that I didn't even realize were there from nations that I didn't even recognize. And so there was a global portion to what happened on Saturday. And this is not because of me. This is because of Jesus and what Jesus had ordained. And God called forth that there would be a remnant that the people who were there and the people who wanted to be a part of what happened on Saturday morning prophetically symbolized a remnant rising up around the earth. And I've told you before, because as Rose mentioned on Saturday morning, that Psalm 68, which is what Arise with Sally Goodwin was based on when I started it 3.5 years ago. 3.5 years ago, I started Arise with Sally Goodwin, and you will see that I have transitioned everything. I've transitioned my Instagram, my YouTube channel, and this Facebook page. I've transitioned it over from Arise to Activate. So after the shift happened on Saturday, I transitioned all of my social media pages from Arise with Sally Goodwin to Activate Her with Sally Goodwin, because we have now arisen. We are now in the stage of activating. We are now activating, and I have shared with you before that the very first verse in Psalm 68, so Psalm 68 verse 11 is the verse that Rose quoted on Saturday when she said, "The Lord gives the word of power. The women who bear and publish the news are a great host." And she spoke about how there are many of you women who are going to publish, who are going to write, because of that verse in Psalm 68. And that was the verse that I started Arise with Sally Goodwin based on that verse, on Psalm 68 verse 11. And some translations speak about a great army of women, some translations speak about a great company of women, some translations speak about a great host of women. But they all speak about this great company, host, army of women who bear and publish the good news. But the amazing thing is that in many translations speak, Psalm 68 verse 1, many translations speak about arise. They say, "Arise, O Lord, let your enemies be scattered." But the Amplified translation says, "God is already beginning to arise and his enemies to scatter." I love the way the Amplified translation puts that. God doesn't say, the Amplified translation doesn't say, "Arise, O Lord, let your enemies be scattered." It says, God is already beginning to arise and his enemies to scatter. And if you look into the Hebrew translations of so many things, I want to do a series on the Beatitudes at some point in time. I'm going to get there, I promise you, at some point in time, because the Beatitudes have been translated from the Greek into Hebrew. And if you translate them into the Hebrew, then you actually see the way they are written in the present tense. So it's not a case of, the meek shall inherit the earth. In the Hebrew, the way it's brought across is that it's already happened. It's written in the present tense as if we live from that reality already. So it doesn't make it sound as if it's something that is coming. And I think so often, instead of living in a space where we are already eternity focused and eternity minded and kingdom minded, we live in the space where we feel like it's coming still. Instead of living, Jesus said, the kingdom is at hand, heaven is at hand, like it's right here. But we live in this space where it's still coming. And I know that we live in this tension between what is here and what is still to come. And we have to manage that space. But there is so much that we miss because we live as if it's still to come and it's still so far away. And yet the Hebraic mindset, the Hebraic thought perspective is that we actually need to live in this present space where it's already here. We are seated in heavenly spaces, and we actually are supposed to live from that place, that we are seated in heavenly spaces. Yes, we don't live in some sort of weird denial that our feet are on a fallen world, but we are seated in heavenly spaces. And so, in Psalm 68:11, it says, it basically says, God is already arising. We're not waiting for him to rise up. We're not waiting for his enemies to be scattered. He's already arising. His enemies are already being scattered. They're already fleeing before him. It's just that, our picture of what that looks like and God's picture of what that looks like are different. Because God doesn't sit in heaven and wring his hands over the state of things on the earth. He sits in heaven and watches his plan unfold, knowing what the ending looks like. So the trick is to drink the water before my mouth dries out. But I get so excited and caught up that I don't. So, The remnant, the 300, we are going to look today at Gideon, the story of Gideon and Yahweh Shalom. Yahweh Shalom, the God of peace. And I am going to do my absolute level best to intertwine my testimony of what happened with this event within the story of Gideon. Because it is literally a testimony of the same thing. And I hope that I do the whole thing justice. I really, really do, and within our time frame. But if I cannot explain the testimonies that are coming out of Saturday, and please, if you have a testimony from Saturday, please share it with me, and please tell me when you share it with me whether I have permission to share it with other people. You are welcome to share your testimony with me and tell me that I don't have permission to share it with anybody else. Please, I just would love to hear it for myself. But if I do have permission to share it, please tell me so that I can share it, because the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And then we trust for other people, for him to do it again for others. And I'm going to share this one testimony because my beautiful friend Jessie shared it in the comments on Wednesday. So I'm assuming that means she's happy for everybody to know it because it was in the comments. But I'm just thinking that you might have missed it because the comments often go up so quickly. When Jessie woke up on Saturday morning, she said to the Lord, Lord, I'm asking you for a change in season. And in her book, and those books, ladies and gentlemen, and I've told you this before, but I want to reinforce it. I signed those books and I wrote a word in every book. And those books were placed in the goodie bags. And I know that some of you got unsigned books. And can I be honest with you? I don't know how that happened. And the only way I can explain that is that you were meant to come to the table and get a signed book with a word written in it by me. That was God's design for you. That is the only way I can explain that. But those books were placed in random goodie bags on random seats. Jessie woke up on Saturday morning and she said to the Lord, I'm asking for a change in season. And the word written in the front of her book, the words written in the front of her book were season change. You can't make that stuff up. I mean, that is a testimony of note. And I wrote words in some of those books that I didn't even understand. I wrote words where I was like, Holy Spirit, please, I pray that the person who gets this word understands what it means, because I have no idea how they're even going to interpret this. So if that was you, please let me know how you interpreted it. So this morning we're going to speak about the God of peace, Yahweh Shalom. And you know, Shalom is a word that is translated in the English as peace. And our word for peace, our English word peace, does not encompass the fullness of what shalom means. So when we read the God of peace in our English translations of the Bible, I think we imagine, peace on earth, goodwill to all men, and things like that. It just sounds like no more wars, no more things, etc., etc. And we miss the fullness of what shalom means. Because, years and years and years ago, when I was summoning up everything that I had inside of me to take my 3 small children and leave my toxic, abusive marriage, and I was consulting with a lawyer, and I said to my lawyer, all I want is peace. All I want is peace. And my lawyer said to me, Sally, if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. And those words have stayed with me my whole life. If you want peace, you have to prepare for war. We have a very, very, very narrow definition of the word peace in English. In Hebrew, the Hebraic concept of the word shalom is wholeness, wholeness, completeness, healing, nothing missing, nothing lost, wholeness, completeness, healing, nothing missing, nothing lost. It implies the positive enjoyment of God and pleasures forevermore. The positive enjoyment of God and pleasures forevermore. That is what shalom implies in the Hebraic mindset. Wholeness, completeness, healing. It implies the positive enjoyment of God and pleasures forevermore. If you look at now, Hebrew was a pictographic language. In other words, if you think of hieroglyphics, in ancient Hebrew was written in pictographs. So each letter of the Hebrew alphabet was a pictograph, because the language, the Hebraic language, is so old that it was before letters were invented, and the language was written in pictures. And so if you go back to ancient Hebrew and you look at the way the word shalom would have been written in pictures, the word shalom, the meaning of the word shalom in pictures, in pictographs, it says this: to destroy the authority that binds us to chaos. I want you to take that in for a moment. I've spoken about this before, but I feel like I need to reinforce this today. When you declare shalom over somebody, you are saying, you are declaring that you are destroying the authority that binds them to chaos. You are taking down the powers and the principalities and the strongholds that bind them to chaos. What does the enemy do? What would the enemy like to do? He wants to bind us to chaos. What is the enemy all about? He is all about chaos, panic, and disorder. That verse in the Bible, and I've taught on this before, when Jesus says to Peter, the gates of hell will not prevail against my church, where they were standing, the land they were standing on, they were standing at the place that the Jewish people believed, or the people in ancient Middle East believed, were the actual gates to hell. It was the space where the ancient godling Pan, where we get our word for panic from, where we get our word for pandemic from, the ancient godling Pan was worshipped, where they believed the actual gates to hell were. Jesus was standing there where he said, the gates of hell will not prevail against my church. On this rock, where these actual gates of hell are believed to be, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against them. Pan, panic. The word shalom means, in the ancient Hebrew pictographic language, to destroy the authority that binds us to chaos, to pan, to panic. So how much more does Yahweh Shalom, when you worship the God of peace, when you worship Yahweh Shalom, is he not destroying the authority that binds you to chaos? I just want to take you to two more things, just so that I can give you an understanding of what I speak about when I speak about the Hebraic pictographic language. Torah. Torah. The word Torah, Bible, the Hebrew word for Bible, Torah. In the ancient pictographic Hebrew, it means to reveal the man nailed to the cross. That's what the ancient Hebrew pictographs spell out. To reveal the man nailed to the cross. Torah. Let's do one more. For those of you who know that you are watchmen, we're all called to be watchmen on the wall, right? To a degree. But those of you who know you are specifically called to be watchmen prophets or watchmen of some sort, right? Shomer. Shomer. The Hebrew word shomer is watchman. Notice how close that is to shofar. Shomer, shofar, shomer. Listen to this, you who are watchmen. One who consumes the chaos of man. That's how that word is spelt in ancient Hebrew pictographs. One who consumes the chaos of man. When you're a watchman and you're the one who sounds the alarm and warns the people, when you sound the trumpet and you call the people back to the eternal paths, you are one who consumes the chaos of man. Are you surprised by that comes against you? Because you take on the very gates of hell. Okay. So, that was just a little digression. Let's move on. We're looking at Judges chapter 6. You'll see where we are going with all of this. We are looking at Judges chapter 6 and the story of Gideon. And if you read the beginning of Judges chapter 6, the anointing is so thick in this place right now. Judges chapter 6. Because I want you to feel the shift, because there was a shift, but how do you steward the shift? We need to steward the shift, ladies and gentlemen. It's important that we steward the shift. So here are the Israelites. They have done evil in the sight of the Lord, and God gives them into the hands of the Midianites for 7 years. For 7 years. And Midian prevails against Israel for 7 years. Verse 3, Judges chapter 6, verse 3. For whenever Israel had sown their seed, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east came up against them. I want you to pay attention to that. Whenever Israel sowed their seed, the Midianites, amongst others, would come up against them, and they would steal the seed, and they would come like locusts, and they would take whatever Israel had sowed. And so Israel was impoverished. And I feel and I know that there were many of you that came into that place on Saturday, and you have felt like for the last however many years, you have sowed seed and it has been stolen. It has been lost. It has been taken by the enemy. You feel like you have sowed and you have sowed and you have sowed. You feel like you have been on the cusp of a wave and the wave has crashed. Instead of breaking and surfing that wave, like Rose spoke about the surfing of waves, instead of watching that seed grow and flourish, instead of the enemy has come in, or circumstances have happened, or bad choices have been made, or bad decisions have been made, and that seed has been lost. You have sown and you have thrown out your seed and you feel like it has been in vain. And you are just, I don't know what has gone wrong. And you have cried out to the Lord, and the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian. And God sent a prophet to the Israelites, and he repeated to the Israelites again everything he had done for them. I brought you up out of Egypt. I delivered you from the hands of the Egyptians and all who oppressed you. I drove them out from you, and I told you that I am the Lord your God. Fear not the gods of the Israelites. And so God, the Israelites cry out to God, as we do, and we say, Lord, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've followed you. I thought I heard your voice. Have I missed this? What is going on? And God comes to us and he's like, I've done this for you, I've done that for you. He reminds you of all the things he's done before. And do we sit and we go, yes, I know. Thank you so much, Father. Not helpful right now. I know you've done all of this. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Jesus. I celebrate all that you've done before. Not helpful right now. And we feel so ungrateful because we know. But we just like, yes, that was then. This is now. How is that helping me now? And God sends a prophet to remind you of all the things God has already done for you. And you say, yes, I know. But can you tell me what he's going to do for me? And the prophet says, fear not. Or the prophet says, but you have not obeyed my voice. And I'm not saying that you haven't obeyed his voice. But often we are in that space where we're just like, have we missed it, God? I know, I've been there. I've been there. Did I miss it, Lord? Did I miss something? And sometimes I have missed it. Let's just be frank. Sometimes I have. And God's like, yeah, you missed it, but it's okay. But it's okay. Because I can still get you there. It might just take a little bit longer. And then the angel of the Lord comes and he sits under an oak, which belongs to Joash and his son Gideon. And Gideon is beating wheat in the wine press. And if that doesn't tell you that, you don't beat wheat in a wine press, I don't think you have to be a farmer or a winery person to know that wheat in a wine press doesn't go together. And so in case you don't understand that, it tells you that he's hiding it from the Midianites. So he's assuming the Midianites won't know that you don't beat wheat in a wine press, and he is hiding there. And the angel of the Lord appears to him. So here is Gideon, and he's beating wheat in a wine press to hide from the Midianites. So he is not out there in the middle of the wheat field beating his wheat in defiance of the Midianites, okay? He is hiding in the wine press, beating his wheat in secret, okay? And the angel of the Lord appears to him and says to him, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of fearless courage. And I just think Gideon must have thought, who? Sorry, who are you talking to? Is that me? Is that me? Mighty man of fearless courage? And there are things that God called me long before I believed them about myself. Long before. Things that he spoke over my life long before I believed them. Things other people saw in me and spoke over me and believed about me long before I did. This book that I just launched, this event that happened on Saturday, it didn't start 3 months ago. It didn't even start 3.5 years ago. It started years ago. God started speaking to me about it years ago. It isn't something that just began 5 minutes ago. People talk about overnight successes. Wow, you were an overnight success. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Not for anybody. Not in the natural, not in the spiritual. People say you're an overnight success because they only noticed you yesterday. But God has been building that thing in you for years. 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 So do not despair, because there are things that God called you years ago that He is still speaking to you. You're just not hearing them because you can't believe that that could be you. I have had books prophesied over me for years. People have said to me, you're going to write books. Years. And I was just like, no, not me. I read voraciously. And I've read so many books that I just thought I could never write like this. Do you know what Gideon does? Immediately, Gideon says to him, if God is with us, why has all of this happened? Why has all of this happened to us? Where are all the wondrous works? Didn't God bring us out of Egypt and now He's forsaken us? Gideon doesn't turn around and go, oh my word, this is amazing. Here is an angel. Okay, look, they were much more used to seeing angels and things in those days than we are now. So they were much more used to that kind of, those sorts of appearances and things. They were much more used to the spiritual atmosphere and the spiritual side of things than we are now. But at the same time, Gideon isn't like, oh, wow, you just called me a mighty man of valor. That's amazing. How are we going to get out of this? He immediately turns into defensive accusatory mode. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Where is this God who has done all of this to us before? And where is He now? And he doesn't even say like, yes, we have been terrible and we have just turned away from God and we have disobeyed Him. He was just like, oh, really? Well, I'm sorry. So He has forsaken us. Not like we have forsaken Him, but He has forsaken us. I mean, Gideon's own father has erected idols to false gods, but Gideon doesn't mention that. And do we do that? Aren't we all like, why, Lord? Why have you done this to us? Before we are, Lord, what have we done? Have we forsaken you? Do we have false refuges? Do we have idols in our lives? I had to lay down idols. My children were idols. They were idols. I had to lay them down. I still have to lay them down. I had to surrender. I had to sacrifice. There were so many things. So many things. And there are still times, my constant prayer is, God, search my heart. Search my heart. I want clean hands and a pure heart. Clean hands and a pure heart. What do I need to lay down? What do I need to surrender? And I'm not saying that to come across as all holy and pure and everything like that. I'm saying that because that is my genuine, because I know how easily and quickly those things creep in. And then God turns to him and says, go in your might, and you will save Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? The way God says this to Gideon, have I not sent you, makes it sound as though there must have been a previous conversation. Because I would have gone, you've never said this before. What do you mean you're sending me? Just the way that is said, go in this your might, you shall save Israel from the hand of Midian, have I not sent you? It sounds like this has been said before, there's a conversation that has been had before. I don't know. Maybe there has been, and it's never been recorded. Maybe it was something that his family was supposed to do. It was something in his family line, in his generational lineage. Who knows? But Gideon comes back and says, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the poorest, and I am the least in my father's house. He immediately comes back with all the reasons why he can't. And they were valid in his eyes. And then he asks God for a whole lot of signs. And then he realizes he's actually seen the angel of the Lord. And then God says, he says, oh my word, I'm going to die because I've seen your face. Very dramatic as our Gideon. And then God says to him, peace be with you. And finally, in verse 24, he builds an altar to God. And he says, calls him, the Lord is peace. Yahweh Shalom. You know, just before the event, we had those horrendous taxi strikes in the Western Cape. And my publisher contacted me in a bit of a panic and said to me, Sally, there's a very real chance that your books won't be printed on time because our staff can't get to work. I want to tell you that, and this is the honest truth, and she said, contact your intercessors, and I did. Ask them to pray because we might get to the book launch with no books. Do you know that I had such peace? And this is what I want to leave you with today. And we're going to go more into the story. I know I've rushed through the last few verses, but it's because I want to go more into them. We're going to go more into this next week, because for some of you, I know that you felt the shift on Saturday and you don't know how to steward it. You don't know how to step into it, and we need to go into that because you need to step into it and you need to steward it. And it starts with this. It starts with you covenanting with the God of peace, with Yahweh Shalom. It starts with you knowing that you have wholeness, completeness, and healing with the God who brings the Shalom. And this is not a journey that I walked in a week before the book launch. This is a journey that I've walked with the Lord in the years that led up to me stepping in to what God had for me on that day. It is all the covenants that I walked in and stepped into with Him leading up to that time. It's the things that I have shared with you all over the last how many years. It's the thresholds that I crossed. Remember that I told you about that one intense experience that I had with Him, one of many, where I was literally conscious of having to physically make that choice, that I wasn't going to be drawn back. I was going to cross over, and I still said to you, I took you all with me, but I fought for that. How I fought for that. I covenanted with God in that moment. And there have been many of those. I haven't shared all of them with you because there isn't always time. But what happens there is you exchange a covenant and God reveals a part of Himself to you. And in the lead up to the book launch, in that time with the taxi strikes where there was this chance that those books would not show up, God covenanted with me as Yahweh Shalom. And I had this peace. I can't even explain it. God, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that those books would be there. But even if they weren't, I said to the Lord, even if we show up to that event and the books aren't there, I will go ahead with that event because I know that you are coming to do something. And if I have to get the books to people afterwards, there was I just had this peace. I knew the taxi strikes would end before the event. I had such peace. I asked my intercessors to pray because I had no pride in that. I knew that I needed to ask my intercessors to pray. And they prayed. But I had such peace in my Yahweh Shalom. And I realized it was because I had covenanted with the Lord of peace. And it was for the first time. I have covenanted with Yahweh Nissi, with Yahweh Jireh, with Yahweh Perazim, with all of these other names that we have spoken about in these broadcasts. With the God of healing, with the God of righteousness, I have covenanted with those. But I covenanted with Yahweh Shalom. And I realized that over this period of time. And because that is the God of, the God of the breakthrough, Baal Perazim, he is in this. And how is the God of the breakthrough the same as the God of Shalom? He is. He has to be, because that is both of those facets are the God of the remnant, because it was Yahweh Shalom. That was the Yahweh that went with the remnant, Gideon's 300. It was Yahweh Shalom that covenanted with Gideon and then took the remnant, the 300, to defeat the Midianites. It is Yahweh Shalom that is covenanting with the remnant, because if you want peace, you prepare for war. Because Yahweh Shalom and Yahweh Perazim go together. I release an impartation of that you will tangibly experience and encounter Yahweh Shalom. The wholeness and the completeness and the healing and the positive enjoyment of God and pleasures forevermore that go with Yahweh Shalom, because that was what was released with that shift that happened. I know because I received that, and I get to release that over every one of you. And it is Yahweh Shalom that will go with you to steward the shift that happened, that you have stepped into. And you get to rest in that peace as you figure out how to steward the shift. And we are going to speak more about this, because I have the most incredible testimony to share with you, and I so wanted to share it today, and there isn't time. But can I encourage you to please like and share? Please like and share this broadcast, please, because there is so much excitement in my spirit for what God is doing. And please, if you can, try and not miss the lives and next week, because I have the most incredible testimony to share with you, and I wanted to share it today and I can't. I'm going to have to share it next week. We are going to steward this shift, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to step into what God is doing. We are not going to miss this. Bless you. Love you. Have an absolutely superbly blessed and Holy Spirit infused and inspired weekend. And I will see you next week. Bless you.